everybody, this is Mike with the Riders Rep channel. I am really excited to bring you today's interview. It's extremely important to me to be able to bring things like this to you. This is Dr. Eli Friedman. He's my cardiologist. He's not just any cardiologist, he actually is a specific cardiologist for athletes. For those of you who don't know me, in 2014, I started to develop some issues with my heart, causing me to cramp significantly, have very strong chest pains, shortness of breath, and an extremely rapid heartbeat. I was hospitalized for it, and that started my journey with my heart. In the time since then, I've seen up to, I've been to 7 different cardiologists before I found Dr. Friedman. Actually, from now on, I'm going to refer to him as Eli, because I'll give you a little story about that in a little bit. Anyway, after going through multiple cardiologists who gave me all kinds of answers about what could potentially be wrong with my heart, one of them even did a surgical procedure on my heart that didn't fix the problem. And it's really important that your heart, especially as an athlete, gets looked at and diagnosed with the proper guidelines, which is very different than just the standard person who goes to a regular cardiologist. So without any further talking about him, I want to bring Eli into the conversation. I'm again really excited to have him here, and thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, it's great.
So I found you about 8 months ago after a long search and a lot of different cardiologists who didn't seem to be able to figure out what was going on with my heart. Like I said, surgical procedures, years of testing, and just a lot of questions that went unanswered. And within the first 10 minutes of meeting you, you were able to be sniffing on the trail of what the issue was. And you found it very quickly. There has to be something in you that makes you passionate about sports cardiology and the difference in an athlete versus just a regular guy.
Yeah.
So I want to talk first about what inspires you to want to work with an athlete versus just a regular cardiac patient.
That's a good question. First, let me thank you for having the opportunity to talk about this. As you said, very passionate about this. And I think a lot of that comes from just how I grew up, which is as an athlete. So from the day I could do it, I was playing all sports. So initially as a team sports athlete, baseball and basketball. And then as my career ended, I played college baseball. Once that ended, no longer had practice or weight room sessions or anything like that anymore. Now all of a sudden I became an endurance athlete, a bad one, admittedly. But
what kind of endurance sport?
So was running and cycling as well. So actually had a back injury during my senior year in college, required surgery afterwards. Never thought I'd be able to run again because I let it kind of linger.
What kind of injury?
I had a discectomy actually. I herniated a disc. I let it linger like any athlete, kind of just hitting my head against the wall, kept trying to push through it stubbornly, and found myself really at the point where I couldn't walk so well anymore. Had surgery, was walking on the treadmill, rehabbing from that, and then said, yeah, I just want to try running, because I would have these dreams of wanting to run, and finally said I'm going to try to do it again, and got into running at that point.
So wait, so you went from a baseball player and a football player,
basketball, not football.
Oh, yeah. Basketball and baseball, to endurance sports.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is usually not the jump that people tend to make.
Correct.
But you just saw it on TV. What made you want to get
I think
that?
It was a different level of competitiveness. So whereas the team sports, you're part of a group, you're part of a community, for lack of a better term, and you are communally working towards a goal. All of a sudden I took that competition from a communal aspect to more just a personal competition. Now, I have no delusions of grandeur. I'm not going to be winning any street races on foot. I'm not going to be winning any bike races. but it was more the personal competition of what can I get a PR? Can I hit a higher level of output? Can I, achieve a longer level? Can I push my endurance to the level? So that has been healthier for me as opposed to being a broken down athlete trying to play basketball
Sure.
and my eyes seeing different things of what my body can do at this stage. So
I want to interrupt really quick.
Yeah.
If you notice, every single interview that I have, the people that I speak with talk about your internal competition. It's not so much as what you're doing against the other people, it's about your internal competition and what you do to push yourself, what motivates you. And I think that's really important to bring up, because again, if you're not motivated internally to improve yourself, you're never really going to just go out and beat your competition. You really have to push yourself, and you need to have that internal motivation. And anyway, I just found the similarity between what you're saying and what all the other people
I agree with you, and I think that's true of anything that you're doing, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's medicine. You have to be able to find that inner fire within yourself. So that's where I found myself being an endurance athlete. I always knew I wanted to do medicine, and my father was a cardiologist.
Okay.
So I grew up with that, and cardiology and sports made sense to me. Just the physiology of cardiology, how the body works, how the body functions, combined with sports, great, made sense. I did my residency at University of Pittsburgh, and when we moved there, my wife, who's from this area, hadn't really been exposed to marathons very much, and Pittsburgh's got a great marathon, one of the top 10 in the country. I made her go out and watch. This is my intern year during residency, and as we're watching, a woman dropped out of the race with heat stroke, and she progressed. We watched it happen, and I said, well, this is interesting, maybe I can get involved. So I wrote an email, got involved with the Pittsburgh Marathon, and found myself at the finish line the following year, kind of helping to direct the medical care there. At that race, a 22-year-old kid died. He was running, he'd been a high school football player, had run plenty of street races before, road races, and about, I think it was a mile and a half from the finish line, passed away. Cardiac arrest right in front of a hospital, had everything available to him that could possibly happen, but no matter what we did, we couldn't bring him back. Turns out he had what's called a coronary anomaly, or a heart artery that arose differently than what's natural for the body, and that's what caused him to die. It was well publicized in the papers, and it made me actually wonder at that point in time, why did this happen? Could we come up with ways to find this needle in the haystack? And that led me to this world of sports cardiology, and the second I found it, it was like a light went off in my head and said, this is what I'm meant to do, because it could combine all the worlds that I'm passionate about, cardiology, medicine, sports, athletics, and really put that into my practice. And it's something I've been developing ever since.
Really? Yeah, you're a truly unique person. One of the things that has made my experience with you extremely unique is, for lack of a better term, your bedside manner. Any doctor I've dealt with through my whole life, maybe except for one or two minor exceptions, they treat you kind of like they're better than you, and you show up in their office and you wait for however long they want you to wait there, and you go in and you're clearly not a priority to them. And one of the things that I specifically remember from the first time I met you was when you shook my hand, you were excited to meet me. And I get the feeling that you have that with a lot of your patients. And it wasn't just you. I met Dr. Castillo, which is one of the other cardiologists that work in your unit, and he was the same way.
Yeah.
He was really excited to meet me, and what also happened was, before that, I met Dr. Guzman, who said, hey, you know what, I don't think I'm your guy. Let me introduce you to Dr. Castillo. So I really found that this particular practice has been very professional and very different from any doctor experience that I've ever had. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this interview is because the people that watch this show are my friends. And so I'm actually kind of getting emotional, because I've known people who have died. I've known people who have quit cycling, who have quit their sport, who have quit things that they're passionate about because they have not found a doctor who really cared. And it's really important, and that's the whole reason for this interview. If I can keep one of you guys training and exercising and doing what you love to do without feeling like you can't do it anymore because you can't find somebody who takes the interest in your performance or your mental health, then this has really been successful. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt your story, but it really stood out to me, really, that the way that you handled our initial interactions, and you still do. So with that said, you were talking about...
Yeah, no, I want to make a couple of points to what you said. First of all, thank you. You know, a little bit of a plug. I think that's the Memorial way and the way we do things. Medicine has shifted recently, and I'd say probably within the last 10 years or so. 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, medicine was very paternalistic. It was, this is what you should do, take this medicine, do that, do as I say, and you'll get better.
Don't question me.
Correct.
Right.
Medicine has shifted recently, and specifically within our world of sports cardiology, it's really shifted, and I think that's driven a lot of our mentality. So medicine is a shared decision-making process. Now, we incorporate people's goals, lifestyles, beliefs, cultures, religions, you name it, into our process, and we take that into play. Specifically within sports cardiology, I'll reference everybody that they should check out an article called The Porta Potty. It was written by a sports cardiologist, one of the leading ones in the country, Aaron Bagish, out of Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard. And he essentially referenced, he's a major endurance athlete, a major well-accomplished runner. But he referenced on a specific day, he was in line to get into a porta potty, as many of us are before any type of endurance race. And he was not a cardiologist at that moment, but he was a runner, just like everybody else. And he happened to hear around him all the different conversations that were going on, whether it was things that were going on with people's lives, maybe a doctor they had seen, their blood pressure, and things having nothing to do with medicine. And he writes that as sports cardiologists, we need to understand our athletes better. So what makes a cyclist different than a runner? What makes a rower different than a football player? And how do we understand that athlete? Because understanding our patients, whether they're athletes or not, helps us to treat them better. And I think really in sports cardiology, that is imperative to our practice, because I needed to understand what made you better. I needed to understand what was impacting your training, your performance, where had things gone wrong for you. And then from there, we can figure out what's going wrong and try to make it better. That's true of medicine in general, but I think really specific to sports cardiology.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely unique.
Yeah.
And as somebody who is treating athletes, you also understand that the sport, whatever that sport is, how important it is to their lives.
Correct.
So one of the doctors that I had seen in my journey, I had a conversation with him about, oh my God, this is devastating. This heart condition is devastating. I can't exercise. And his response was, well, you're not dead.
Yeah.
And I say, well, take my bike from me, but it's not worth it if I can't do the things that I love to do.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of people take the approach of, well, look, my job is to keep you alive. Where the approach that you've taken is, hey, you have a passion for this. Let's get you performing, because that not only makes you healthier, but it also helps your mental health.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
And we're all a little bit mental. I'm not calling any of you names, but we are all a little bit mental.
Agreed. Yeah.
So anyway, I will also, by the way, just to circle back, in the show notes below, you're going to see a link where you can read that Porta Potty article. I've read it myself. It was really good. Do you have anything else that you recommend in terms of reading, or anything else that people can be looking up?
Well, there's lots of things to read, and certainly anybody can do a Google search and Google sports and the heart and what's too much and what's too little. It's really important to have a conversation with somebody who I think is up to date on this information, because there's a lot of bad stuff out there that you'll read. That people say that exercise is not good for the heart, too much exercise isn't good for the heart, too little isn't good. And there's a lot of smoke out there, and I think it's really important to have a detailed discussion with somebody if this is a concern for you about where you fall on that realm. Because really, as sports cardiologists, it's our goal to keep people exercising. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that exercise is beneficial for the body. There are certain circumstances where we might tell somebody you can't. Those are rare, and they do happen. But we want to keep people exercising. We want to keep people healthy. Olympic athletes live longer than the general population. Gold medal Olympic athletes live longer than other folks. So exercise is good. We can't predict the future. Things may happen. How we adapt to these things is really the nuance of the field.
It's really good. Like I said, I'm really excited to have a chance to talk with you. So kind of moving back a little bit. So you decided that you wanted to start running from basketball and baseball. Yeah. And what happened? Did you have any kind of a cardiac issue, or tell me a little bit about just your experience as a runner, and maybe if you didn't have a cardiac issue, just how your experience as a runner helped you understand better the people that you deal
Absolutely.
with and the athletes that you talk to.
No specific cardiac issue. I just know that it's healthy for me, and I want to do it. Maybe not as healthy for someone who's 6'5", 240 pounds on the knees and the joints as much, but cardiovascular fitness, it's really good. So initially it stunk. It was treacherous. I hated it. Just the burden of getting myself cardiovascularly fit in that way, where as I had been as a team sports athlete, it was very different transitioning from that to endurance running. And as any endurance athlete will tell you, there were good days and there were bad days, but that fire was lit, and you just become addicted to it. So again, it was more a preventative thing from a health standpoint, but also a preventative standpoint from my mental health as well, to keep me even, keep me focused, keep me competitive in a way that I hadn't been previously.
Okay. Speaking of, one of the things that I love to do on my show is give tips. Yeah. I think tips are really cool. I'm talking with somebody who's an expert on the heart. What can somebody do to improve the level of their heart function and to make themselves better cardiovascularly? Is there any suggestions that you have in terms of diet or any specific type of intervals or anything that somebody can do to improve their performance?
Yeah, so maybe not necessarily for your audience, but the general audience, exercise, cardiovascular exercise from a heart health standpoint is probably the best thing you can do if you're looking to maybe not necessarily improve your performance. That crosses over into a line of folks like yourself and the performance community, but cardiovascular health is, for me, is based on cardiovascular fitness. The more exercise you do, the better off you're going to be. The recommendations out there are 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. So for somebody who's already exercising, maybe already fit, that's 30 minutes at a time on an elliptical, and getting your heart rate up, getting a sweat to the point maybe where you can carry on a conversation, but you wouldn't be comfortable doing that. So that generally for the general community is where I would recommend starting. Diet-wise, I like to recommend the Mediterranean diet, so really olive oil-based fish, chicken, the lean white meats, baked, not fried, staying away from the red meats, staying away from the fried and fatty foods. If you're talking from a performance standpoint, there's thought out there that no mammal meats actually may be really beneficial from a performance side. I know a lot of people are being vegans out there. There may be some benefit to that. Again, that gets into a little bit more nuance and a little bit more personalized decision making. But I would say from a cardiovascular standpoint, diet and exercise are the pillars of what we do.
Okay. Well, it seems to make sense, and it's right in line with what a lot of people are saying. Yeah. Are there any supplements that you feel are more valuable to maintaining a cardiovascular health?
This has been studied up and down, and there's a lot of marketing behind it. But really, vitamins and minerals, not going to hurt you, but probably not going to help either. In this country, in the United States, if you eat a balanced diet, you exercise, you probably don't need the vitamins and supplements as much. Now, with that being said, again, every person is different. So on a personal level, maybe a dietary supplement would be helpful, but on a community-wide level, I don't think so.
It's not something that you recommend.
No.
What about beets? One of the things that comes out over and over again is beets.
Yeah.
Boosting nitric oxide,
Correct.
Boosting your blood flow, red blood cells.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
So for folks who may be looking for a little bit of a performance edge, these things may be okay. You're right, they act in the nitric oxide pathway, cause vasodilation specifically of the pulmonary bed and our pulmonary arteries. And when we do that, we think we are able to oxygenate better and then perform on higher levels. Probably not going to hurt anybody. it is being studied. I think people are using beetroot juice as actual supplements in the medical world as well. So if that's something you want to supplement with or drink that as a supplement, I'm fine with that.
Okay. No side effects, nothing to worry about, anything like
not
that?
Really, no.